Welcome to daadgalerie. This is one of the venues of the 11th Berlin Biennale's epilogue titled The Crack Begins Within. DAD, more than just a venue, is actually a collaborating partner due to the residency that Argentinian artist Osias Janov did here in Berlin, supported by DAD. And we are standing in what we have called the Storefront for Dissident Bodies. It is a space that reflects on what it means to dress oneself in to a specific space, what it means to understand that cities are not made up of buildings that are simply corpses when they are not inhabited by moving bodies. So understanding that cities are actually made of these pulsating bodies, and that the way that these bodies inhabit and make and transform space has to do with the way they garment themselves into these spaces.
Delaine Levas is the artist who is welcoming us to this storefront for Dissident Bodies. At the entrance and showing from outside and inside, you have her installation where she is placing different garments, clothes, and designs, embroideries that she was doing during last month in order or in relation with the research that she was doing. These garments, these clothes, for her are a kind of armor, because all of her work, it's about the oppression that the gypsy in her UK country, but also internationally, what the Roman gypsy people was suffering from these hegemonic powers. So in this case, she was doing this deep research between two figures that were important in her community, Sarah Kali and St. George, as a kind of iconography, and she mixed in one a very non-gendered figure that she calls Saint Sarah Kali George. The idea for her in these designs is more like to use as a empowered or the bodies in relation with its hegemonic powers. Mainly, we can see in the video that she made how, for her, capitalism and also extractivism related with the nature, it's a very big subject where she wants to confront or she wants to protect us with all of these garments and embroideries. We are now in front of the wall with the installation of drawings of Andrés Fernández. Andrés belongs to the platform Debajo del Sombrero, an initiative for artists who are differently able. His maps are maps of the channel of birth that implies and interrogate ourselves how we arrive to this world, how are our intimacy and also our inner and outer space, how are our relations with the city, with the architectures, with other people. And this is in this dialogue that Andrés is in one moment interrogating ourselves about human beings inside a city and also our relations with the others. In this work, Edgar Calel, a Mayan Cachiquén artist from Guatemala, is asking to all or questioning how we can empower ourselves with the language, how the language is also a tool, a weapon, to identify ourselves, but also to empower ourselves. In this jumper that he wears also in the film Sueño de Obsidiana, that you can see the film at Cave, her sister embroidered the 27 different languages that the Cachiquén people has in Guatemala to define the idea of the territory. From the 60s onwards until the 90s, Francisco Copello was performing and being related with theater and dance. In the 90s, he decided to start doing these collages that contains photographs from the original performance made in 60s, 70s, and 80s. These first collages also present the fragile and vulnerable bodies and also vulnerable country in terms of politics, how fragile was Chile days before the coup d'etat when Francisco Copello was preparing the performance Casa de Locos, Madhouse. The last series, Casta Diva, has a connection with the first collages of Madhouse because this is a performance that he made in 1985 in New York and Rehab Health Center in the Bronx, where he performed as a drag, as a trans diva, a kind of opera as a escape to empower the people and also the audience.
This is a work by Dana Michelle and Tracy Maurice. It is a piece called Lay Them All Down, which uses footage from a performance they made in Montreal called Jam to Jams, where Dana Michelle, who is a choreographer and a dancer, her work has always defied the limits of dance, somehow engage in a kind of play with each other, seeing how much they can gaze at each other, engage with each other. And for me, this piece is really a choreography in itself. It's a two-person choreography where Tracy Maurice's camera is absolutely a part of this dance. And in this piece, in Lay Them All Down, Dana is engaging with a space with different garments. She's very commonly using clothing that is too big for her and finding ways of actually penetrating, sexualizing, rubbing against, rejecting all of these different garments and objects that surround her. FCNN, the feminist collective with no name, founded in 2016 in Copenhagen, has presented here a work called Hydrocapsules.love. The core group that is working on this project consists of Anita Beek-Poor, Dina El-Kaisi-Friedmuth, in collaboration with artist and music producer Neda Sanai. This project continues to develop questions that FCNN has been working on for some time now around who is speaking, who is heard, who is seen, and who is watching, also within the art world. Hydrocapsules.love is a space that is digital and physical, a space for encounter, a kind of eco-feminist organism where different collaborations and conversations very specific to non-white voices can occur. In this sense, the feminist collective with no name and their specific iteration here, DNA, thinks in a collective mode and practices in a way that cancels the singular artist and questions in a critical way and also a playful way what can occur or how an artwork as a commodity can be questioned but also used.
Here we have the installation of Osias Llanob and Sirenes Errantes. Osias is an Argentinian artist. He was on residency in our space in Extrota Print and was doing a deep research to understand the queer notion of the history. After that show, and due to the corona, when all of his friends and many of the artists and collectives that he works with were locked down, still locked down right now in Argentina. He was in conversation with many of them, and one of the groups that he belongs is Sirenes Errantes. They realized that during the pandemic, it was so hard for many people, elders, people with other abilities, or even people with different mental health issues due to the pandemic that they needed to help. So during the time from July until now, even after the Biennale, they start with this project of listening service. Osias, after talking with them, they decide to collaborate in an aesthetical way, but also in a content, using all these exchange conversation in between the people who calls to ask for the service and one of the sirenes. The installation has two sides. At the beginning, these shells are activating with the voice of these conversations and made the drawing. And in the second space, we see some of the objects from the result of this exchange conversation.
This is the work of Solvognen, a theater collective from Denmark. This is a very important theater piece that they made in 1974, which was actually a week-long action called the Santa Claus Army, in which children, adults of all shapes and sizes dressed up as Santa Claus using this outfit or this figure as a kind of weaponized vessel to move through the city. And these actions that were occurring in Christmas 1974 evolved from roller skating with children, singing Christmas carols in schools, to raiding the stock market, the police station, tearing down the class court. This entire work has to do with how it is impossible to follow this spirit of gifting, of giving, of this idea that some person dressed up in this spirit of solidarity and love can give things, can only be turned within capitalist society into a criminal action. Upstairs in the daadgalerie, we have the work of Naomi Rincón Gallardo.
Era un tiempo tan oscuro y blando que los antiguos seres dejaban su huella en todo lo que pisaban.
It's a work dedicated to Zapoteca activist Rosy Donicio, who was fighting against the mining industry in Oaxaca. The work is a fantastic dance musical of lo-fi glam with corridas and boleros and hip-hop and a kind of psychedelic queer pop of libertarian desire, creating a speculative fiction around the resistance to the extractivist industries and impulses in that region in Mexico, but using Mesoamerican cosmologies and decolonial feminism to create these speculative lo-fi glam fictions.
¿Cuál será el animal que en figurilla de barro en el pecho lleva flores y en la trompa un torsal? ¿Qué criatura trepadora roba el fuego con su cola? Tras el curso de los ríos y aparece con la aurora. Ponle un jarro de aguamiel pa' que venga y se emborrache.